Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday to everyone who are with us this afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for this very important topic. And I want to welcome you to our session on mental health. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Joanne Rosary, etc. I'm the Managing Director of Lee Hecht Harrison, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. This webinar is hosted by the People Management Association of the Philippines, and I really want to thank PMAP for organizing this topic, a very critical topic nowadays. And this is a very important one because our workplaces have an impact on our mental health and well-being, especially nowadays when there are so many complex and simultaneous changes and so many happenings all around us as people leaders. Taking care of our employees means that we take care of their physical and mental health, and that should be a top priority. Otherwise, of course, there would be an impact on their morale and productivity as well. Of course, we will answer the question, how do we manage and raise awareness of mental health in our organizations, and what can we do for our employees who are starting to show signs of stress and burnout? Before we start our webinar, PMAP would like to acknowledge Healthway Medical Center for inviting our speaker for today. And of course, PMAP would like to thank the following sponsors who made this webinar possible: Makati Medical Center and Home Healthcare Incorporated. Thank you so much. Without you, this webinar would not be possible. And of course, before we start our session, I would like to call on our trustee, Ms. Bebet Reyes, to lead us in an opening prayer.
Good afternoon. Dear Lord, we are gathering to you and ask you to bless it with your wisdom and grace. We thank you for this opportunity to be together, to grow in your love and service of you and of each other. We ask you to enlighten to know what is true and just, and strengthen our wills to carry out faithfully what we come to see as our work today. May all our thoughts, words, and actions be directed to making your name and your love better known among men for their sanctification and their happiness here and in eternity. Amen. Heavenly Father, we also pray for those who are sick right now, to please grant them healing. We also pray, O Lord God, for each and every one who are gathered here this afternoon, to please send down your Holy Spirit upon us and grant us the gift of your Holy Spirit, the gift of courage, the gift of wisdom, and the gift of love and self-control, so that we will be able to overcome what we are encountering these days. We ask this in the mighty name of your Son Jesus, by the power of your Holy Spirit, through the intercession of Mama Mary and Saint Joseph. Amen.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bebet. And also I want to thank you for leading us in prayer in spite of the very short notice. We really appreciate that. Again, to everyone who just joined us, I would like to welcome you to our webinar on effective management of workplace mental health. Today's webinar will focus on the factors that affect mental health and the development of psychological resilience and mental toughness that could help employees respond to challenges in the workplace. At the end of our session, we will have Q&A, but feel free to send in your questions to us using the WebEx chat box or through the Q&A button, and we will get to your questions at the end of the presentation. And let's now hear our presenter for this afternoon. Our speaker is a licensed psychologist and psychometrician, a certified dementia rater of Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, University of Washington in St. Louis, Missouri, USA. PMAPers, let's give a round of applause and a very warm welcome to Mr. Richtofen de Jesus.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your time for attending the seminar this afternoon. So, talking about how to manage mental health, specifically in our own workplaces. So even in the middle of the discussion, please feel free. I'm more than happy to answer them within the time being. Okay? So, all right, let's just try to. I'm just having trouble uploading the web page. Oh, sorry, the. I think we can ask Ma'am Carol to share the PowerPoint.
Alex, please share your presentation after ano, 2, 3. Thank you.
Okay. Notify me if there be any disruption either of the audio or the video so that I will not continue on without any audience. Okay? All right. Do you have vision on our, do you have any visuals now on the PPT? There you go. All right, good. Okay, let's begin. So this afternoon, again, we're going to talk about how to effectively manage your mental health, especially in the workplace. So what we need to understand here is that we have 5 objectives. Next slide, please. Okay. So objective number 1 would be to understand what mental health is and what to identify if, for example, somebody's already having mental health issues. So what we're trying to do is to establish the red flags that could be possibly happening within around us. Okay, so we need to be very sensitive about this. And then additionally, we will also look into how to build psychological resilience, growth mindset in the workplace. And finally, we will have a talk regarding how to cultivate mental toughness within each and every one of us. Next slide, please. So, what is mental health? So, specifically now in our pandemic, the word mental health has been tossed around quite freely. Okay, but the problem is that mental health has so many problems, so many stigma that are going on to each and every one of us. So it would be more important for us to understand what it is all about. Okay, next slide, please. So when we talk about mental health, primarily, we're not only talking about how you are thinking as an individual, but you are also looking at how you regulate your emotions, as well as how you try to relate with other people around you. So technically, when we say mental health, it has 3 components: how you feel, how you think, and how you relate. And it is very important that all of these 3 would be in an optimal level in order for us to properly understand one another. Next, please. When you talk about health, it's not just technically the absence of a disease. So primarily when you're talking about health, you are technically targeting an optimal level wherein you are not only ridding off yourself of any pathology, but also on the fact that you are trying to improve further and have a proactive attitude in ensuring that you have the highest quality of health possible. So as you can see here in our illness wellness continuum, it's not enough that we stay on number 5, which is neutral, but rather we should be aiming for number 10, which is optimal health. Next, please. So when you talk about mental health, of course, you need to give some considerations to the following contributors. For example, your brain and your physiology are very important because certain brain chemicals control our behavior. Now, if these brain chemicals will be put out of balance, then primarily we are now facing a manifestation of a psychological problem. So that's why it's also very important for us to keep our brains healthy. Okay? In addition to that, our mental health is also being built upon by our life experiences and trauma across too. Okay? So specifically, any traumas that you have encountered, they become big players in the kind of mental health that you would have as an adult. And of course, last but not the least, is that your family history of mental health. Of course, if you have other family members, specifically those who are very close to you in terms of blood connection, then you are very much in line and at risk of developing mental health illnesses as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, there are a lot of myths about mental health, okay? And what we are trying to do here is to break those myths in order for us to properly understand the true nature of what mental health is all about. For example, most often people would say that mental health is not a real illness because, unlike some physical illnesses, it is not tangible. However, mental health illnesses are real illnesses because they come in either four distinct dimensions. You have what we call deviance, distress, dysfunction, and danger. Let's try to look at them one by one. When you say deviance, it means that the way that the person acts, feels, or relates to people are significantly different than what is typically expected of them. So, for example, if you're seeing somebody in your office who is doing a bit of a left field approach to everything, that could be a good sign, but not a complete one. Because what you need to understand is that deviance alone will not be helpful in terms of diagnosing somebody with a mental illness. There should also be a second factor of distress, meaning these individuals with mental illnesses are also suffering within themselves. In fact, there are instances that they don't even understand what is going on with themselves. So, for example, among those people who commit suicidal attempts, particularly to harming, there is a large percentage that will tell us that they are not technically there to hurt themselves, but rather this is because they are lacking the feeling or the emotion that they testing us. That is a very distressing feeling for them. They cut themselves just in order to let the feeling back in within their system. So again, a person with mental illness will always have distress. They themselves are suffering from what they are going through. And then there is dysfunction. So this means that the person now becomes incapable of continuing what he or she has used to do in the past. Primarily, okay, when it comes to dysfunction, it goes on even to the most basic of activities of daily living. So this would include bathing, eating, dressing up, even doing your basic toothbrush in the morning. So those things will already be affected. And last but not the least, danger. Now, among the four, this is the factor that is seldomly seen. But there are some peculiar instances that danger can be present either towards the person himself or towards another individual. The completion please go back, thank you. The completion of these four concepts will then solidify that there really is already a presence of a mental illness. So let's say, for example, you have an office mate who dresses weirdly, but he's not suffering any distress from it, is still functional at work, and is posting no danger to anybody or himself. Would you consider that as a mental illness? Of course not. So what you need to understand is that there should be at least a combination of these four. Next, please. Next myth. Mental illnesses will never affect me. Okay? Actually, it can. What you need to understand is that mental illness does not cover any age or gender or financial status or socioeconomic status for that matter. It can go with anybody. Okay? Now, in psychology, we have a theory called the diathesis stress model. And in this model, it states there that a certain combination of your genetic material and your experiences are the ones that produce your mental illness. If you will take your attention to these two containers on the lower right side, as you can see here, there are two containers representing two individual people. Now, the person, okay, has a low D. Now, by the way, D stands for diabetes or the genetic factor that we all have. What you need to understand is that we are prone to take any mental illness. Okay, we are all having a tendency to develop it. It just differs on the percentage that we all have. Some people have higher, some people have lower. Now, if you are a person with a lower genetic tendency, then you are at an advantage. On the other hand, person number two who has a higher percentage of his genetic tendencies will have a disadvantage over it. Now, stress is what we experience. So that's represented here by the letter S. So as you can see, if both of them are presented with the same amount of stressors, the one with the higher genetic percentage is the one that is most likely to develop the mental illness. Now, what we need to understand is that if we will compare the two, the genetic material is something beyond our control. But the reaction that we have to stress is something within our control. And that's what we're trying to do this afternoon. We're trying to teach ourselves not to be that much affected by stress, because what we need to understand here is that stress is a reaction to an event. And since it is a reaction, we have a say on how much do we react towards it. Next slide, please. Mental illnesses are just an excuse for poor behavior. Maybe you have heard it, especially if you're near the HR department. For example, you might hear an employee say, na, you know what, I'm getting late every day because I am depressed. Or let's say, for example, you know what, I'm getting late because I am such in a disarray that I am very disorganized with what I need to do. Actually, it's the other way around. The person might be always arriving late or might be always disorganized in the workplace because he or she might be having a mental illness that he or she might not be knowledgeable of. What the person needs to understand is that there may be already a condition lurking within each and every one of us that may be affecting our behavior. Next, please. If you will look at this diagram, okay, our brain, if there's a poor balance of chemicals, will then lead to the cognitive distortion that we have. Okay? That's why, for example, you can either get easily distracted, or let's say, for example, you will get easily forgetful. This is due to the fact that your brain chemicals are not in proper level. Okay, in the proper level. And that's what medications are for. Psychotropic medications enable us to put the chemical levels back into an acceptable level of functionality. Another one, of course, is poor self-concept and self-esteem. So you might be asking, what's the difference between the two? When you talk about self-concept, this means your knowledge of who you are, the accepted traits that you have, the accepted weaknesses that you have. So it's more of your knowledge of yourself. But when you talk about self-esteem, it's how you feel about yourself. So one is more cognitive, the other one is more affective. Now, either way, whether you have poor self-esteem or self-concept, what it does is that it then creates a mood fluctuation within a person. Finally, look at the way that you are placed within your group. Do you have a good or a poor social support? People with poor social support then proceed to what we call a loss of motivation, or they lose the drive to achieve or to do something productive with themselves. When you now add up the cognitive distortions, mood fluctuations, and the loss of motivation within an individual, that will significantly manifest into a poor work performance. Next, please. Here's another myth. Bad parenting causes mental the mother. It's because of the upbringing of a child. Uh, his personality is developed. Actually, it is untrue. Okay. In fact, our parents are just there during the first 20 years of our lives. But besides them, there are across with that become contributory to who we are as individuals. So they could be our friends, or even, in fact, random strangers that we meet every single day. Okay, so it depends on the experiences that you have and the kind of thinking that you have that will dictate rather whether you will develop a mental illness or not. So it's not your parents. Okay, next, please. People with mental health illnesses are violent and dangerous. You know, in the Filipino context, this is very common. If you see, let's say, a street dweller who is very disheveled and very dirty, a mom would often say to her child, oh, wag mong tignan yan. Don't look at his eyes. He might become violent. Actually, it's not. Not all people with mental illnesses are violent. In fact, those who have a good sustainability for psychotherapy and medications are more docile and less inactive than when they were back when they were during the height of the pathological state that they are in. Okay? So those who are given a proper amount of care become very well adjusted individuals. So it's not always a fact that there will be a danger to somebody. Next, please. Oh, thank you. People don't recover from mental illnesses. Again, this is untrue. Especially nowadays that we have this pandemic. Maybe there are a lot of people who have developed some anxiety and depressive symptoms who are not in full blown anxiety or depressive disorder. So they have the symptoms, but not necessarily the illness. Usually nowadays, we have a condition called adjustment disorder. And this is brought upon by the fact that there is something new that's brought in our lives, and it's something unexpected, and therefore we are still trying to cope up and to learn how we will adapt to this new situation. What we need to understand here is that if we have adjustment disorder, for example, as long as we learn how to cope up and adjust to the new situations that we are in, the symptoms will also fade away naturally. So this just means that mental conditions can be reversible, especially those who are being identified at an early stage of development. That's why it is very important for us to learn what are the red flags to these mental health illnesses. Next, please. People who experience mental health illnesses are weak and can't handle stress. Again, it's wrong. It doesn't necessarily follow that you have a mental illness that you are weak. Sometimes the situation just is stronger and bigger than what you can handle. It doesn't necessarily follow that you are a failure just because you have developed a mental illness. Not to mention, individuals who are now going into psychotherapy, for example, are more than capable of handling the stresses that they encounter because they are being trained and taught on how to handle it using specific psychological techniques. So, for example, through programs like this, you can now enable yourselves to be equipped and be more knowledgeable on how to counteract the negative effect of certain stressors in our immediate environment. Next, please. People who experience mental illnesses can't work. Again, this is wrong. If you will notice, even people with chronic mental illnesses can be employed because they can still be very much trainable on the tasks that they do. Of course, we need to understand that they are not capable of handling more decision-based jobs or managerial level jobs, but they are capable of being trained on routine-based jobs, and they do quite well on it as well. Okay? Next, please. Kids can't have a mental illness like depression. Those are adult problems. Now, maybe some of you have young children, and we should not underestimate the fact that even kids can get depressed. In fact, mental illnesses fix no age range. Okay? As long as our children can get frustrated, traumatized, or afraid, they can still develop mental illnesses. That's why we have to be careful, and we need to also be vigilant, and we need to give them a listening ear to what they would have to say. Because especially among the parents, if your child would say something funny or weird, you would just dismiss it immediately and saying, you know what, it's just in your mind, you're just entertaining it because you feel that you're getting attention out of it. If we dismiss it that early, we might be missing out on properly identifying a certain illness that is looming within our children. So please don't underestimate that. Next, please. Next, everyone gets depressed as they grow older. It's just part of aging. That's untrue. Okay? There is such a thing as aging gracefully. So it doesn't necessarily follow that you are 60 and above that you need to become grumpy. It's not like that. Okay? There are people who are well adjusted and are very much capable of developing positive attitudes even in their senior years. And the good thing is that because of modern medicine, our lifespan has been increasing decade seeing more centenarians within our society. And even though you have reached 100 years old, as long as you learn how to have a positive attitude and a proactive stance to what you need to do, you could have a good sense of mental health. Next, please. Those are the natures of what myths are blocking our true knowledge of mental health, and we have also found what really mental health is all about. So the question is now, what kind of mental health issues are common in our workplace? Next, please. Here are the top three, okay? Out of a research done among 2 million employees in different countries within Asia, Europe, and America, the first one is increased workload. It's a nowadays that as we downsize our company, we are forced to give one person a task individuals. Okay? That's why 40% of those who engage in this research found out that workplace stress becomes very visible if there is an increased workload that is being given to them. Okay? Now, what happens is that they develop burnout. We'll find out what burnout is in a short while. So, besides burnout, the common side effects would include a home life conflict. Why? Because employees are forced to take their jobs at home. So instead of spending time with their family, they're still working even though they're already at home. Okay? It can also lead to physical health problems because you might not have enough time for you to sleep or to even eat properly because, again, you're consuming most of your time doing your work. In addition to that, it could also lead to a high number of absenteeism or even poor concentration if the person is at work. Because again, the person is too distracted by trying to think of many things that he or she has to do. Okay? Top two, financial concerns. Okay? 20% of those who have been engaged in this research noted that as long as you have no healthy finances, your mental health also takes a toll as well. Diba? You will always be thinking, when will be the next paycheck? Or how will I pay my bills? Or there are tuition fees that are coming up with my children and I need to pay off them, of course. So this is also creating a good level of stress within our employees. And what are the side effects that we can see? Well, primarily is insomnia. So you're now having a difficulty in trying to sleep because again, your mind is continuously thinking of the financial problems that you have. Another one is substance abuse. So you try to deflect your stress by trying to drown yourself in substances. This could include either food, nicotine, alcohol, or even illegal drugs. And then, of course, there's anxiety. Okay? So when you talk about anxiety, it means that you are dreading something that is potentially, okay, or something that could potentially happen or occur. Okay? Next, please. Top three. Workplace bullying. Okay? So again, this would also be reflective of 10% of those who engage in the research. And like financial troubles, it also develops into anxiety. Sometimes it can even get into development of a panic and, of course, depression. Okay. Now, if you will look at it, among the top three conditions that were cited here, next slide, please, you can see that there is a pattern that you could identify. So, whenever you are having stress at work, the first thing that you could look at is burnout. When you say a person, the person feels that his energy has already been very much depleted, and because of that, the person starts to distance himself or herself from his identity while working. So it means that the person starts to question his good fit for the job, his capability to finish it, his capability to do it effectively, and sometimes the person entertains thoughts of changing one's career or maybe leaving the company that he or she is working for. And we all know in the HR department that it's a nightmare to have somebody to get out of the company and try to find somebody else to replace them, especially, for example, if the position that that person holds is something that's highly technical and it's in very short supply from the market. Okay. Now, the good thing about burnout, and that's because it's that's why it's number one here on the list, is that it is reversible. A burnout solved whenever, let's say, for example, you take a short break from your work, or just by the application of simple relaxation exercises. So burnout is something that's not truly that pathological yet. Okay. Now, I understand that there are recent studies that the WHO would say that it is already a looming problem, but the American Psychiatric Association is not yet accepted as a true to what we call the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM. Okay, so it is a concern, but it's not really yet a pathology that we have to be that concerned about. Now, anxiety is already a full-blown disorder. So when a person suffers from anxiety, it means that the person continuously thinks of possible things that could happen to him or her. And it's that continuous dread that becomes distressing for the individual. It's more of like you're trying to make scenarios, okay, and try to find out what are the possibilities of these scenarios coming true. And that exhausts the individual and puts him off his proper concentration from work. Some of you might have questions like, what's the difference between fear and anxiety? Is there even a distinction? Well, the correct answer is yes. When you say anxiety, you are still dreading on something that could only possibly happen. On the other hand, when they have fear, for example, it means it is something that is already happening. So, for example, my usual joke towards this kind of situation is a mother-in-law joke. It's more of like this. If your wife tells you that your mother-in-law will be spending the next 1 or 2 months with you, and she's not yet in your house, and you keep thinking of possible scenarios that will happen, that's anxiety. But if your mother-in-law is already at your doorstep and she's already there, that's fear. Okay? Another one is insomnia. Now, insomnia, okay, is just not only the difficulty in initiating sleep. In fact, there are three types. You have your initial, your middle, and your terminal insomnia. When you talk about initial insomnia, that means that you have a difficulty initiating it. So the problem is that you might be lying on your bed for 1 to 2 hours, but you are not yet still falling asleep. In severe cases, you already reach the following morning. So tipong unang hirit na ang palabas, and you're still awake. Okay? So that is a serious problem that you have to address already. And there are now several sleep clinics within the country that will be more than willing to address you for that. Middle insomnia, on the other hand, means you sleep, but the problem is that your sleep is disrupted. So let's say, for example, you go to bed at 10, you sleep immediately, you wake up at 11, then you sleep again at 12, you wake up around 3, around 5, and then you finally wake up at 7. Now, the main problem with middle insomnia is that, yes, you are capable of sleeping, but your sleep is not that deep enough. And therefore, you are robbed of the capability of proper rest. That's why you wake up in the morning still exhausted and you feel that you did not have the amount of energy that you would need for the day. Of what we call terminal insomnia, which means that you can sleep quickly, continuously, but you would wake up very early, and then from there you would have a trouble going back to sleep. So what happens here is that you are now now there's a caveat. If you are 55 and above, that's quite normal. Why? Because as we grow older, we need less hours of sleep. Okay? But it doesn't necessarily mean that you will go less than 6. So the minimum at least is to have at least 6 hours of sleep a day. Okay? Let's continue. Substance abuse. So in substance abuse, that's the time that you start trying to deflect your stressors by trying to subdue yourself into certain substances, whether legal or illegal. Okay? Eating would also be included here as well. So what we call emotional eating. So if you go home and eat a tub of ice cream every single night whenever you are stressed from work, that could be considered a substance abuse. Now, the problem here is that the food, the drugs, or the alcohol or the nicotine triggers a very primitive part of your brain that gives a primitive response, which is soothing and relaxing. So what happens is that you have a effect of something comfortable whenever you use these substances. And as a result of it, you're trying to crave for more to the point that you increase the tolerance that you have with the substance, which means that the next time that you try it, you will need to have larger doses just to get the immediate high that you would need. Okay? Next, depression. So when you talk about depression, it's just not mainly sadness or feeling blue or feeling frustrated. In fact, there are distinct differences between them. When you're feeling frustrated, it just means that you have a goal that you wanted to have for yourself, but it did not materialize. And you are feeling frustrated because it got blocked. Now, frustration does not necessarily mean that you will get automatically depressed. Frustration can be taken positive come after it. So, on the other hand, depression, first and foremost, you need to understand that it has a time frame. So, for you to be clinically depressed, you need to be suffering from the sadness for a minimum of 2 weeks. So, that's 14 days, okay? So, in the majority of a 14-day period, you need to be experiencing sadness and either a loss of motivation, which is what you call avolition, or a loss of pleasure on things that you used to do before and you had fun doing them. That's what we call anhedonia. So, if, for example, you are feeling sad and you now start to either lose motivation on things that you used to do, or you're continually doing the things that you like, but you are not enjoying them as much as you have, then that could be a start. Now, depression becomes vast because after the sadness settles in, you could either have cognitive distortions in the form of memory loss or disorganized thoughts, or you could have problems with eating, either you're eating too much or too less, or sleeping too much or too less, or at worst, you might even have recurrent thoughts of death. Take note, it doesn't necessarily follow that you will already commit suicide. It's just that you're continuously thinking of ending something. It doesn't necessarily follow that you will materialize it. It's just a ruminating thought that continues to revolve in your mind. And last but not the least, panic attack. Now, you might be wondering, is there a significant difference between anxiety and panic attack? And the correct answer is yes. Anxiety can be just purely in the mind, but a panic attack is a mind problem that's manifested in the body. Okay? So, what happens here is that in a short period of time, you have a surge of extreme feelings, and that these feelings tend to spin you out of control. So, in a panic attack, you start to gasp for your breath, okay? Your palpitation becomes quite fast. You could either feel so cold or so hot. You feel that as if you are losing your mind over things, okay? From there, okay, you feel very distressed. Now, a panic attack is technically a symptom because a panic disorder, okay, that is resulting out of a panic attack. So, for example, if a person develops a panic attack, an episode of a panic attack, 1 month would be very crucial. That in that period, is that person ruminating on the idea of a subsequent attack? If he or she does, and it's affecting the daily activities of that individual, he now develops the panic disorder. That's why if you're in an HR, and then let's say somebody tells you, you know what, I think I have panic disorder. The first thing that you have to ask is that whether the person did or did not have a panic attack. Because you cannot have a panic disorder without at least a single episode of a panic attack. Okay, again, please feel free to ask questions in our chat box. Okay, I'll be more than willing to answer them. Okay, next, please. So the question now is that, okay, those are the issues, but what at least are the red flags in the office? So here are the following. There we go. If you have a coworker that you notice that he or she has been either eating too much or eating too little, okay, in the past few days, then that's something that you could use as a conversation start up. Okay. So for example, let's say your friend orders a packet of KFC, okay, and he tells you that that is his merienda for the day. Okay. So you might want to work. He might be deflecting the stress to the food because the food gives them a relief from the stress. Okay. Or if you have a coworker who's not eating, okay, you might ask them, titipid ka ba? Okay, may start that conversation already. Because losing appetite is also one significant symptom that there's already something wrong. There we go. Little. So insomnia or what we call hypersomnia. Oops, muna. When you say insomnia, again, it's a difficulty in trying to induce, maintain, or prolong your sleep. Hypersomnia, on the other hand, means that you have a good time of sleeping at night. So you had 8 to 10 hours of sleep. But on top of that, you still remain very much, what do you call this? You are still very much sleepy within the day. So what happens here is that even in the morning, you're just starting at with your work, and you already feel sleepy. Okay, you feel as if you don't have any energy to spare. Okay, sometimes it can go worse into a condition called narcolepsy, where you just sleep instantaneously. So you might be working on your laptop and then instantly fall down to sleep. Okay, next please. Another one is social withdrawal or avolition. Now, let me just clarify something. Most of us would say that if a person does not go with their friends or doesn't want to hang out, that person is antisocial. Di ba? Meron pa nga mga t-shirt, antisocial social club. Okay? Now, that's wrong. Please don't use that word because in psychological terms, when we say somebody is antisocial, it means that that is an individual who has trouble trying to respect the life and property of other people. So snatcher, rapist, magnanakaw, mamamatay tao, yan ang antisocial. So a person who doesn't want to go out with his friends or somebody who doesn't try to mingle with people, these are just people who are socially withdrawn. Okay? Sometimes they have a worse condition called avolition, meaning they just don't have any motivation or any drive for anything anymore. So what happens is that they have a problem. Okay, they now have a problem on trying to just push themselves in the morning. You know, with people with mental illnesses, you can notice that they can sometimes wake up early, but it takes a long time for them to get out of bed and get ready for work. And actually, that's the reason why they are late. Okay? Sige. Next, please. Having low energy. This means that you're already having fatigue. So this means that even though you have slept properly, took your breakfast, drank your coffee, and yet you are still very much tired. Okay, so that's a disorder already. All right, next, please. Feelings of emotional numbness. You become a walking zombie. Let's say, for example, you're watching a comedy movie, everybody's already laughing, NR. Crew, crew, crew. That's the sound in your brain. Okay? Or, for example, you're watching a very touching drama. Everybody's already doing the waterworks. With you, nothing. It becomes flat. You know, in psychology, I often tell my patients, I would be very much appreciative if you and go to the floor, bouncing things and things like that. That's all right. At least I know that you're reacting. But the moment that something bad happens to a person, and then the person doesn't react towards it, that's a major problem that we're dealing with. And from there, we really need to have serious work. Okay? So feelings of emotional numbness. Next, please. Psychosomatic reactions. From the word psycho and soma, meaning mind and body, what happens here is that the illness of the mind is manifested in the body. So, in an HR setting, for example, you might be hearing complaints like headache, stomach ache, backache, any and the doctor will inspect you and give you a thorough checkup. Nothing comes on. You don't have any physical symptoms whatsoever. So this just means that you have a mental concern that your body is paying for. It's usually within your nape, okay, and your back. For the women, it's usually stomach ache as well as within your genital area. Specifically during your menstrual period, it's also a high possibility. That especially if you're dreading the fact that you will get your period in a week or so. Okay. In fact, that's already a disorder nowadays, ladies. It's called premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and it could be manifested psychosomatically. Okay, next, please. Helplessness and hopelessness. So, this is what happens if the person continues to do an effort, to exert an effort, and yet the person doesn't achieve any success with what he or she does. So the person starts to feel helpless, and then the motivation to exert an effort becomes smaller and smaller, to the point that there will come a time that the person will just accept the fact that, you know what, I can't do anything about this anymore. Suko na ako. And then from there, the person falls back, okay, and becomes unreactive. It is using these thoughts actually that people who commit suicide go through. So whenever you are encountering individuals who feel that they have already become hopeless and helpless, you monitor them more closely, because these are the signs that these individuals can be in the brink of a possible suicide in the near future. Next, please. Okay. As I was telling you a while ago, you can deflect the stresses into substance. So the person could become a chain smoker to the point that you need a smoke for doing everything, even going to the bathroom. You need to have a smoke in order to release your nerves and to calm them down. Okay? Or you are drinking like a fish. Diba? Nakakaubos ka ng 1 to 2 bottles in a night. Okay? Not the smaller ones, but the large bottles. Or even the use of drugs. Okay? Next, please. You get confused, you get forgetful, you are always on the edge as if you are a piece of rope that's being continuously twisted until you break. Okay? That's happening because again the brain chemicals are not in their proper levels. Okay? So for example, you miss out on a lot of things. Like, oh, I have a meeting pala, and then there's another conflicting meeting, and I said yes to both of them. Okay, because your mind is floating away when you did those accepted those meetings. Okay, or for example, your assistant is asking for you and tap at them. It's more like, pwede ba? Hindi mo ba ma-figure out yan on your own? Kailangan ba ako talaga lahat ng sasagot para sa'yo? Even though the person is just asking, what would you like to have for lunch? Diba? So sometimes when you have this kind of situations, it's worth taking a look within yourself. All right, next, please. You're now yelling or fighting with family and your friends. Okay? So you try to displace your stress and your anger to someone, particularly those who you know that can fight back. So it's either your assistants or your for your driving and shout at that person certain profanity that even you do not, a good sign already that something's going on. Okay? Next, please. Thank you. There. Okay? So you can start by, oops, lagpas po. And go back one slide. Thank you. So the mood swings become severe. So you might be wondering, sir, ito po ba yung bipolar? No, it's not. Okay? Bipolar is much more serious because in bipolar, you have two extreme emotional states and then you juggle them one at a time. Okay? You shift from one emotional state to the other. That's bipolar. These are just simple mood swings. So it's like you're pleasant in the morning, and then as the day goes by, you get a little grumpy. Or baliktad. Most Filipinos, they are grumpy in the morning because we are not morning individuals. And then as we go on through the day, we become a little bit better. That's what you call diurnal variation. Okay? So you get moody even within the day. Okay? For bipolar, it's not. It's a little because for bipolar, what happens is that you stay depressed for as long as 2 weeks, and then you become very much positive and energized for around 4 to 7 days. And I do mean very much energized to the point that you don't want to sleep because you think that you have so much energy that so many activities could be done and so many accomplishments could be made. Okay, that's now take note. You cannot have PTSD in a critical incident. So, what is a critical incident? A critical incident is something that is unpredictable, uncontrollable, life threatening, and meaningless. What does that mean? It means that you don't know when it will happen, you cannot stop it while it's happening, it doesn't happen every day, and it compromises your own physical safety. So, for example, you saw your boyfriend with another man. Oh my, is that a trauma? No, because as you can see, it doesn't compromise your physical safety. Not unless your boyfriend will kill you. Sana naman hindi. Diba? So, if you have a critical incident, there is a 40% chance for you to develop PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. Take note, PTSD occurs if you have after 1 month of the incident, that's the time that you develop the symptoms. Sometimes it even goes longer. Okay? So sometimes we have what we call PTSD delayed onset, which means that the symptoms only come out 6 months after the incident. Now, you have to take it a little bit seriously because PTSD, once that it is not properly processed, can linger within an individual psyche for as long as 30 years. So imagine, let's say, a person who lost her home at around age 5 will be carrying the toll of that event until the age of 35. And therefore, it will significantly affect the kind of adult relationships and experiences that he or she would have. Okay? Next, please. Aha. If you're now having delusions or even worse, hallucinations of things around you, congratulations, you really have a mental illness. Okay? Seeing your supervisor, even though he is not there, or voice in your ear, okay, then we need to talk because those are serious problems that you have to address immediately. Okay? Next, please. Next, thinking of harming yourself or others. So again, this is quite peculiar, but it happens from time to time. Now, again, as I told you a while ago, most of the time there are non-lethal suicidal acts that occur. They happen because what the person goes through is so distressing that he or she just wants to regain the feeling that he or she had before. Okay, they become so emotionally numb that having a feeling once again. Okay? You can right. Next, thank you. You have an inability to perform even the daily tasks. So, for example, you are in charge of timekeeping, having a difficulty studying the data. You're incompetent. Let's say you are capable of properly understanding all of the nitty-gritty documents, SSS, pag-ibig, and PhilHealth. But now you are making gaps. You are losing things within yourself. You are not capable anymore of doing the task that you have once mastered. Now, as it goes worse, even the basic activities, you can't sleep, you can't take a bath, you don't want to eat, okay? You don't even want to change your clothes. You just don't want to get out of bed in the morning. Okay? This is already a very serious sign that you have a mental illness. So those are the red flags. So if those things are the ones that you observe with your coworkers, it's something that you need to act upon. Okay? And it is something that you have to really address immediately as you can. Okay? So now the correct questioning is very important. Never say, okay ka lang. Okay? O kaya, don't say, may problema ba? Kasi pinangungunahan nyo kagad. You're already preempting it. The correct way is to just follow the acronym ORA. O-R-A. Observe, reflect, ask. How does that work? First, observe what the person is doing. Second, back to the person. Let's, for example, we this let's have one employee. Errors in the last week. Okay? They'll tell him problem one ba to just trigger him to be defensive. So the first observe and then bring it back to him. Bring it to his attention. Because he may not be understanding what he is trying to do. So you can tell one, I have observed that in the last 7 about to talk about what you're trying to send is that you have an accommodating attitude towards it and you're open enough to what the person has to say. He doesn't have to prove himself to you. Instead, you are just willing to listen to what is going on in order to properly, okay, address the issue that he or she has. All right? Next, please. So, we now understood what mental health is all about. We have broken the myths on what uncovers mental health, and now, okay, we have also we have just those kind of things. Okay, next, please. Next, thank you. So, what is resilience? Okay, now what you need to understand is that when you say resilience, just remember two words: bounce back. How do you bounce back in a situation? So, if life gives you lemons, how do you make the lemonade? How do you make a positive thing out of this negative situation you are in? Okay? In Filipino, paano ka babangon? Paano ka lalaban? Resilience is the quality that we can have and develop, okay, on how to bounce back from the adversity that we have just encountered. Next, please. Okay. Now, when you say you are resilient, mean that you're already free from experiencing these stressful situations. It's not. It's not a get out of jail free card. Hindi yung tipong, resilient ako, hindi na ako namumroblema. It's not. In fact, the occurrence of problems is the main reason why you become resilient. Because you're continuously facing challenges and you're overcoming them one by one as you go through them. That's how resilience is. Okay? Now, the good thing is that resilience is something that's not innate. Okay? Therefore, it is something that is learned. It's something that can be developed. And like a muscle, as long as you continuously practice it, the stronger it becomes. The more formidable, okay, your resilience is, the more capable you become of fighting the adversities that you face. Next, please. Now, there are 4 components of being resilient. So as you can see from the diagram here, we have connection, meaning, wellness, and healthy thinking. All of the 4 of them should work with one another in order for you to develop a resilience for yourself. Let's go through them one by one. Next, please. Okay, let's go on building your connections first. Prioritize relationships, meaning You need to learn how to connect. The main problem of isolation is whenever you isolate yourself when you have problems, you are just technically sitting in your own polluted thoughts. So, therefore, what happens is that only your thoughts are the ones revolving in your mind. And as there is a lack of proper perspective, okay, what happens is that you are sinking yourself even lower and lower. Okay? That's why a fresh perspective of someone else is always something that you could use to the who is asking for your advice. Somebody is asking for you also learn to be empathic, meaning you need to understand on how to put yourself in that person's situation. But take note, the difference between empathic and sympathetic or sympathetic rather is that when you're empathic, you just understand the situation. But when you're sympathetic, you also feel the situation, and that's where it becomes wrong. Because if both of you are already crying about your situation, then you should not be talking to one another because you're just pulling one another down. So instead of understanding what the person is going through, okay? That's why you need to have friends, good social support. Okay? Next, please. A group. Now, the good thing of joining a group is this: you realize that you're not going through the struggle on your own. Becoming a member of a group makes you realize that there are also some people who are struggling and are fighting, okay, whatever adversity they are going through. And that enkindles a significant level of hope within each and every individual. Totoo yung kasabihan na misery loves company. Why? Because the company becomes the wall that you could put yourself into, and that could push you into fighting whatever problem or concern you are going through. Okay? Next, please. Take care of your body. Foster wellness. Okay? So this is the second connection already. So what you need to understand is that stress is both physical and emotional. In fact, heart health and brain health is very much related. So, meaning if you take care of your body properly, then you're also taking care of your mind properly. Diba? When was the last time that you ate a healthy meal? Diba? Maybe you're just eating either corned beef, hot dog, luncheon meat, beef, hot dog, just rotating them one at a time. It's more of that won't be helpful. Okay, that won't be significantly helpful to you. It would not, because primarily the one that you put to your body will also go up to your mind and your brain. So as long as your brain is not healthy, your mind will be significantly affected by that as well. That's why exercise is also very important, and you don't have to do it for a long time. You just do it around 20 to 30 minutes every single day. It's not a question of how much, it's a question of how often. Okay? The good thing about exercise is that whenever you do it, there's a certain level of chemical known as endorphins that come out of your brain that make you feel better. Okay? Next, please. Practice mindfulness. Either prayer or meditation would be a good factor in this situation. What you need to understand is that having a spirituality will enable you to understand that there is something bigger than yourself in this situation. So by doing so, you accept that there are weaknesses that you need to get identified with, that there are certain compromises that you need to do, and more importantly, there's still some hope that you can look for. Okay? So the good thing is that nowadays there are a lot of different relaxation exercises. It's just a matter of trial and error. Okay? And you can apply them to yourselves. They're very easy to do. It doesn't take a long time. You can even do it while at the office because most of them are used to a sitting position. Okay? Next, please. Avoid negative outlets. Do not try to introduce substances to your body and your mind whenever they're down. Okay? Because what you're doing there is that you're just putting a temporary resolution into something more serious. Okay? And because of that, You are just prolonging the agony that you have. Okay? Next, please. Okay? When you find purpose, what happens then? I'm That's all. Okay? When was the last time that you helped somebody, random person? Okay? You need to do certain good things enable for you to feel better with yourself. Because when you help somebody, you then realize that you still have something that you could give to others. Something that can even lighten up another person's day. And therefore, that will then help you understand that you are not really at the bottom after all. And therefore, you're still in a better position than what other people are. In addition, being proactive is also important. When was the last time that you tried to improve yourself? When was the last time you tried something interesting? When was the last time that you tried to do something new? Because most of the time, we're just being reactive. A situation is given, we have to deal with it. But actually, what we do is to have a more proactive attitude where in which we are now trying to seek the things for ourselves. Okay? And by doing so, it then gives us a sense of achievement. And like purpose, achievement is another ammunition that you can have in destroying stress. Next, please. Move towards your goals, okay? Now, what you need to understand is that you need to set certain checkpoints within yourself, even in a day, okay? Let's example, you're suffering from severe anxiety. Then you wake up, you got to work, and then you tell yourself, you know what? Since I woke up, I'm here at the office now, nothing bad happened to me. So pats on the back are very essential. Here's another one. Among you here, for example, whenever you finish a task, you start to tell yourself, you know what? This task could have not been completed if I did not exert an effort towards it. Maybe you should start doing that to yourselves because that will at least remind you that you are still a part of the process, that you are still something that contributes to an outcome. Next, please. Okay. Activity for yourself. Maybe most of the time you are shy or just feeling down with yourself that you think that you could not do certain things that you were not able to do before. When was the last time that you took a hike, for example? Or maybe just tried some new exquisite cuisine that you haven't tried before? When was the last time that you tried to cook for yourself? Because learning new things and acquiring new skills can help you realize that your life is not just a routine. Life can be dynamic. Because primarily when we settle and we already identify that life is just a circle, a non ending, boring circle that we have to go again and again, we feel down. But when we try to discover new things for us, that will enable us to become better people. Next, please. Embracing healthy thoughts. Keep things in perspective. Okay, it's a good example. We now have this pandemic. My freedom because of this pandemic, because I had to stay at home. Really? Did you lose your who among you here can still buy items from Lazada or Shopee? You can still browse through your internet. You can still watch Netflix. You can still order the food that you like to eat. So therefore, you did not lose your freedom. It's just been changed in the way that it is presented to you. We can still do what we need to do by doing online banking. We could pay the bills by online banking as well. We can still see our friends through Zoom or through other platforms like this one, Cisco WebEx. So there's just only a change in the way that we do things, but we can still do things. Sometimes those exaggerations can even pull us down lower than where we should be. Okay? So you need to understand, am I just exaggerating things? Maybe I'm just trying to dramatize everything even though they are not to be dramatized about. Next, please. Accept the change. We have been already in this pandemic for 6 long months. How long will it take in order for you to accept that this is now what we can do? In fact, we should not be even looking at it as new normal. It's just that it's something that we need to do now. It's just our daily thing. Okay? Because new normal, labeling it like that, will just tell us and make us miss the old normal because it could be comparative. You can tell to yourself, ay, dati nagagawa ko yung ganito, ngayon hindi na. Again, you need to understand that the only permanent thing in life is change itself. And we have no control on when changes could occur. So you just need to learn that as we go along with changes, we also need to learn how to adapt to it effectively as we can. Next, please. Maintain a hopeful outlook. Now, a lot of us may be asking this question: when will this end? When will this pandemic finish? Okay? Maybe a lot of us are asking that. But the point of the matter is this: why not say, you know what? I have finished another day. My family remains safe. We are all able to eat. We have good things that we can do, and we can even share to other people who have less than us. By doing so, what you're focusing on is the fact that there is always hope, that there are still good things that are occurring in your life. That's something that is healthier as compared to continuously wondering when this will end, because primarily you don't have any control over it. So why frustrate yourself? Next, please. Your past. Okay. You know what I always tell my patients? Compare yourself to what were the things that you messed up in the past that you're doing better, things that you made wrong turn, things that you missed out, things that you have taken for granted, and maybe learn to capitalize those mistakes and change the behavior that you have. Okay? Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. Okay. Now, those are the things that will help you to become psychologically resilient. But most often than not, the identification of these things come at a very serious time already, wherein the condition is already full blown. That's why you need to seek professional help. Now, what you need to understand is that nowadays we have licenses for this professional. So psychiatrists have licenses, psychologists have licenses. You might have a question on what's the difference between. So technically, a psychiatrist is somebody who has trained in the medical field and looks at mental illnesses as a form of physiological illness. That's why their main treatment method is physiological as well. On the other hand, a psychologist is somebody who has been undergraduate training, either a master's or a doctoral degree. And what they do is that they get to the root of the problem through the process of psychotherapy. So again, please ensure that your mental health practitioner is licensed. It's your protection. Okay? Now, what you need to understand is that sometimes, okay, you can face somebody who is not within the same values or same perspectives as you do. And that's okay. I always tell my patients, psychotherapy is like courting somebody. You need to have good chemistry and right timing. Don't be discouraged if the first person that you go through is somebody that you don't have much agreement with. It's okay. It's not a big deal. You just have to need to go through again to another person. Now you might tell me, you know what, it's tiring of repeating the story again and again and again. But the matter of the fact is this: the more that you go to people and try each and every psychologist that there is around you, maybe all the more that you're increasing your chances of finding the one, quote unquote, okay, the psychologist who can really help you out. Okay? Okay, what? I have a question here. What are some resources in the Philippines where employees or employers can reach out to if they are needing to get help or even just a simple diagnosis? That's a good question. Thank you very much. From Catapult, okay, Lexi Chinquanco. All right. You can log on to the official website of the Psychological Association of the Philippines. That's pap.org.ph. And they have a roster of clinics who give free services, especially now because of the pandemic, who could give you consultations on anxieties and depressions. Now, besides that, of course, you can also look into Facebook groups. Okay, you could either have PAP or Psychological Association of the Philippines. You could have PMHA or Philippine Mental Health Association, and then you can also have PGCA or Philippine Guidance Counselors Associations. Okay, here's another question. If an employee feels that he or she is more superior and doesn't acknowledge his or her head, can we consider it a red flag in the mental issues in the workplace? It depends. I cannot say a straight answer to that because it depends first. Thank you for that question, Christine. It depends first if how is the superior subordinate relationship between the two. Okay. So, for example, to go back to the history of these two, do they have circumstances wherein, let's say, for example, the head messed up and the subordinate who fixed the problem for her? Because sometimes the incompetence of somebody above us can also trigger uh, this kind of reactions from the subordinate. So it depends. Is she only having that relationship with her superior? Try to see it because maybe if she is kind to other people and it's only to that superior, then I don't think that's automatic a mental problem. Maybe it's just a relational problem between the two of them. Their dynamics are just not proper. Okay. I have been told that we can collect the questions and then we can answer it later together. All right, it's okay. So again, in terms of seeking help, especially if the red flags are already getting serious and the fact that they are already affecting your activities of daily living, then all the more that you should seek help immediately. Remember, some mental illnesses are reversible, especially if they are identified at a very early stage of the problem. Next, please. Now, the important thing is that when you reach out to a mental health professional, you need to trust that person. Okay? What you need to understand is that the mental health professional is doing the best, okay, that he or she can do. Sometimes it's just not a proper mix of their values. For example, we have this case before in the clinic that there was a patient, okay, who filed a complaint against one of our counselors. So the patient said that the counselor told her to pray. And since she was an atheist, it became a hot topic issue that her mental health is caused by the fact that she doesn't believe in God. So the patient took it a little personally and became irate because of that. Now, those things are common. But what you need to understand is that the therapist was just a little bit insensitive, if I may say so, to that situation. But in good faith, the therapist was still trying to do as best of what he or she knows. So it's just a matter of the fact that your values are not matching properly. That's why those concerns occur. Okay, next, please. So, how do I apply a growth mindset, okay, at work? Okay, next, please. Okay. Now, actually, it's the matter of not how good you are. Do you want yourself to be? Because, okay, I like watching TV, okay? I like watching Netflix. I'm suggesting that you watch this documentary. It's called The Founder, okay? Actually, it's not a documentary, it's a movie. It's a movie about Ray Kroc, the one who made McDonald's to what it is right now. And during that movie, he says one thing: persistence. How would you like to push yourself, or how long would you like to push yourself okay, on things right now. Okay? So it's not a matter whether you're talented or not, whether you are good, whether you have good connections, but it's actually how far would you like to push yourself? That is what growth mindset is all about. Next, please. Oops. There we go. When you say growth mindset, it means that there is a persistent thought in your mind that there is still something out there, another level that you could go through, another level that you could achieve for yourself, another step that you could take. The attitude that it's never ending. I will continuously learn as long as I'm living. That's how a growth mindset is. Next, please. Now, the problem is that most of us, we don't have a growth mindset. What we have is a fixed mindset. It's more of like you now understand that you have done everything that you could for yourself and you're already made. So you feel that, okay, I finished college, I had a graduate degree, and I'm now more capable of managing this organization. I am out of my mind. I'm I'm good. That's a fixed mindset. Because what there is that because you are technically reaching your achievements, now about the possible achievements you still need to go through. Okay? Kumbaga nga sa mga hapon, wala kang kaizen. Wala kang continuous improvement. Okay? However, in a growth mindset, what happens here is that every single thing that you go through, positive or negative, each challenge that you go through, they become a door that opens opportunities for learning. What it teaches you here is that every single thing that you go through is a learning experience wherein you could capitalize yourself and develop either a new skill or sharpen an old one. Next. Now, what you need to understand here is that having a growth mindset means that your effort is more important than what you have. Because what you have will stay what it is. Diba? Law of inertia. What stays at rest remains at rest as long as somebody else, unless somebody else pushes them. So it's the same phenomena. Okay? You will just remain with your abilities and stick with that abilities unless you cultivate it. You try to grow, you try to develop those abilities, extend them, push them to what they can still be. Okay? Now, although people might differ in each way that their initial talents, aptitudes, interests, temperaments are, we are still capable of that. Okay? Sometimes it's not your talent that will get you to success. It's actually more of how hungry you are for that success itself. Okay? And you need to understand that failure is not technically a roadblock or an end, but rather just one learning experience that adds up to who you really are as a person. And therefore, it enables you to put another new combination of things within yourself and redevelop something new within you. Okay? Next, please. So, according to Carol Dweck, there are 25 ways on how to develop your growth mindset. Let's go through them one by one. First, acknowledge and embrace your imperfections. It means accept the fact that there are things that you're not good at. It doesn't necessarily follow that you cannot do them. Maybe you just don't have the necessary skill set for you to do them. Maybe it's just not now. But the acknowledgement that there are things that you cannot do will push you to grow. Okay? Next, view each challenge as an opportunity. Okay? What you need to understand is that opportunities are given to you in the form of difficult challenges. Okay? Because if they are easy, if they are things that you can do in a very smooth way, something that's very familiar to you, then you're not learning. You're just repracticing what you have. Instead, embrace every difficulty because it will teach you something that you might not even understand and identify as something that is with you in the last time. Okay? Third, Try different learning tactics. Sometimes you may be pushing a square peg on a round hole. So therefore, you might need to want to look back, take a step further, and then try to find where's that square hole so that you can fit that peg properly. You may be just not using the right technique for a task that you have. Maybe you are looking at it from within. Maybe you need an external perspective of the situation that you have. Okay? So you need to diversify your tactics. Next, number 4, follow the research on brain plasticity. Now, this is a fairly new concept. When you say brain plasticity, this means that the brain, as we grow older, is still capable in continuous improvement of itself. Before kasi there is a theory that when you reach adulthood, that's your brain stabilizes and stops developing. But in the late 80s, early 90s, research has proven that there is such thing as brain plasticity, and we are now trying to venture is still continues to reinforce, not stop, continuing to reinvent yourself as well. Number 5, don't use the word failure or failing, rather learning. Those hiccups, those setbacks that get your way, these are things that you could learn from for future improvement of who you are. And therefore, you should enable yourself to embrace those failures. In fact, again, do not call them failures. Call them learning incidents or learning experiences. Number 6, stop seeking approval. Okay? When you prioritize your approval from others as compared to the process that you need to do, you are forsaking learning. Because technically, what you're just after is the approval of those people around you. On the other hand, it should be you who's approved of yourself, approving with the fact that you have gained something new, that you have learned something different, that you have become more varied as an individual, which makes you more vibrant as a person. Okay? Next, value the process over the end result. It's not actually it's not actually when you get there, but it's more of how you get there. Understanding what you have to go through in order for you to understand, okay, the situation that you are in. So what you need to understand here is that you should enable yourself to understand the nitty-gritty of what you're going through. What are the substitute along the way? Because that will help you to understand that there is no single way of doing something successful. Okay? Next, please. Cultivate a sense of purpose. Why? Some of us, for example, maybe office, we have a picture of our family, we have a picture of a house that we like or a car that we are dreaming of. That's good. Having a goal. Always tell yourself there is something that needs to be done. That's why I am here. Sometimes, reading your job description from time to time will enable you to reflect back. Ano nga ba trabaho ko? What is my job here? What is my function? What's my contribution towards my organization? Because reminding yourself of that keeps you grounded and therefore keeps you having a purpose in where you are right now. Number 9, celebrate the growth with other people. Okay? Learn to achieve success, not superiority. There's a difference. When you try to achieve success, you have social thoughts in mind, meaning you want the team to rise with you. You want the group to rise with you rather than yourself rising above them. So in the workplace, we are not aiming to be superior to another individual, but rather to be successful so that we can lift the entire group as well to become successful. Next, number 10, emphasize growth over speed. Life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So it's a question of how long can you be there? How long can you stay? How long can you stick to the situation? Okay? If there is something worth doing, it's worth doing well, not quickly. Okay? What we need to understand here is that we should be understanding why we are being asked to do this, not too much getting preoccupied with the fact that there are deadlines that need to be met. Okay? I'm not saying you need to be irresponsible of the deadlines, of course not. But what I'm trying to say is that you need to prioritize the fact that there is some one way or another, every single task we do has a significant impact on what we are. Number 11, reward the actions, the traits. Especially among the managers here, you need to learn to tell your people on when they are being smart. Don't praise them just for the fact that they are smart. Because again, talent is just there as long as somebody else pushes it and puts it into action. So don't recognize the fact that he is talented. Recognize the time that your subordinate is using his talent for something good or really manifesting or exhibiting that talent into purpose. Okay, next, please. Number 12, redefine genius. Okay, genius is not being talented. Genius means that you're consistently and persistently working hard towards what you want to have in your life. Now, number 13, portray criticism as positive. It's something that's hard to swallow. But what we need to understand is that comments that are being given to us, they are there because what it gives us is a new perspective that we can look ourselves into. Let us not be afraid of identifying new faces or perspectives within ourselves. Sometimes we need a mirror to help ourselves to look at who we are. And sometimes the criticisms could be a good mirror to what we are doing. Next, number 14, disassociate improvement from failure. Okay? It doesn't mean that you have a room for improvement, means that you have failed at something. In fact, what it means is that you're already doing something good, but there is still room for making it better. It means that you have met an acceptable level of what you're going through. But you should not just stop on doing something unacceptable, but rather try to step up into doing something even better than that, even more than that. Provide regular opportunities for reflection. Who among you here tries to still ask themselves, what have they done for that day? It's very important. You need to backtrack. What have I done today? What kind of things have I accomplished today? Even though how small it is, the important thing is that you made something out of your day. And what you need to understand there is that those activities could not have been accomplished if it wasn't for your own effort towards it. So therefore, give some time to reflect, especially on the day's events, specifically on the things that you were able to do. Okay? Next, hard work before talent. Okay? Focus on the effort that's being made. Sometimes an end result may not be the direct resolution that we are looking for, but what we need to understand is that sometimes it will enable us to feel better if we learn how to recognize the effort that is being exerted by the people around us. Okay? And by learning to understand that there was an action that was done. Okay? First by the person in order for us, okay, to evaluate it properly. It's more of like, don't look at how the result came up, but rather how much effort was exerted to it first. Okay? Learn to appreciate that first because that will be more reinforcing for the person. Next, please. Highlight the relationship between learning and brain training. Here's the point. The brain is like a muscle. The more you use it, the more it gets developed. So therefore, keep yourself mentally stimulated. Okay? When was the last time that you challenged yourself to a crossword? Or tried to solve a Rubik's Cube? Or tried to use Sudoku, for example? Or at least maybe finish a level of Candy Crush. At least very, very simple na yon. So try to do something that enables your brain to be proactive. Okay? Something that makes it work. Something that's least passive. Okay? Number 18, cultivate grit. Okay? Instead of looking and seeking for what others will say to you, seek something that you would like to say for yourself. Try to strengthen yourself by motivating yourself on your own. Because sometimes what we need to understand is that there are people who are stingy when it comes to reinforcement. Okay? We can never stop that. There will always be people who will always trigger us to continuously seek their approval. Stop it. It won't be helpful for you. Okay? So, what you need to understand here is that you should be focusing on how you help yourself. Kumbaga, you try to understand that it's you who will begin the improvement of who you are. Number 19, abandon the image. Okay? When you wish everything takes an effort. Gusto mong pumayat, you would have to take on a diet and an exercise regimen. Gusto mong yumaman, kailangan magsipag ka at maging knowledgeable on how to invest your money. Gusto mong gumanda, kailangan marunong kang mag-exercise ng katawan mo at maglagay ng kung ano-anong regimen sa iyong mukha para makatulong sa iyong pagganda. So everything has a price to pay. So therefore, if you cannot picture yourself on doing the effort, don't even entertain yourself on the idea. Simulan mo muna sa tanong, can I do it? Am I willing to do it? Am I willing to go to the sacrifices involved in it? If you are, then that's the time that you start picturing yourself. Okay? Number 20, learn how to use the word yet. Maybe it's just not the right time. Diba? If you're struggling with something, it just means that you're not yet into that process. You just are not yet that adept to that process that you're going through. It's okay. You're still in the middle. You're still at the start. Don't push yourself too hard to the point that you don't recognize the fact that things take time for them to develop properly. Nothing is really instant. Okay? Nowadays kasi we are being used to things becoming quick and quick and quick in terms of their accessibility. But you need to understand that there are some things that are still taking time in order for them to be completed. 21. Learn from other people's mistakes. It's not wise to compare the success of another person from you, but it is worth the salt for you to compare how other people fell down in order for you to avoid doing the same. It's more of like when you're doing research. You need to look into the literature first so that you don't reinvent the wheel. It's not worth it to exert a lot of effort into doing something that's already been done. You need to learn from the mistakes of others so that you don't get into the same pitfall as them. Next, please. Number 22. Make a new goal for every goal accomplished. So once you're done with your master's, for example, try to see what could I do now? Can I do another master's degree or maybe proceed to a doctoral level degree? It's more of like trying to idealize what could be the next step. If I'm now a line supervisor, when do I get to be an assistant manager? If I am a manager, then how do I get to be as a junior executive? Okay? So it means that you need chapter. Don't stop. Di ba sabi nga sa, I think it's G, don't stop believing, sabi nila. Diba? You continue on. Sa journey ba yun? Or sa G, I don't know. Not so sure about that. Here's another one. Okay? Take the risk in the company of others. Sa madaling salita, don't be so uptight. Okay? So, what you need to understand is that sometimes making mistakes in front of it's something that you need to go through. Sometimes what people need to understand is that you need to give opportunity for people to catch you. And it's okay. admit that you are weak. Okay? In fact, it's a sign of respect that other people also. It's not only you. I often tell my patients, you know what? Sometimes you look in the mirror and you tell yourself, oh, ang pangalan ko ay Juan, hindi Atlas. Therefore, hindi ko dapat pasan ang buong daigdig. You need to learn that sometimes, if things get a little bit serious, you let other people catch you. And that's okay. Number 24, think realistically about time and effort. Especially nowadays, a lot of young people get depressed because they are the instant generation. They want to succeed in a very quick time. Diba? You see fresh graduates who say, you know what, I want to become a manager after 2 years. That's why, if you will look at it, the trend nowadays is that they go from one job to another. They jump from one job to another. And that's the problem. Okay? They don't learn how to really get themselves properly grounded, learn the ropes, and let time also become a factor. Be realistic when you're goal setting. And last but not the least, number 25, take ownership of your own attitude. Meaning, you need to practice this mindset and claim it as if it is your own. You need to say, now, you know, it's me. I am a person who is continuously looking for something that I could improve myself into. So sa madaling salita, walk the talk. Okay? You need to learn how to practice what you're thinking. You need to learn how to apply it, to manifest it. Okay? Next, please. Let's have a short video. So I want to talk about what mental health is, the myths of mental health, the red flags on the things that we need to look at when it comes to mental health among our coworkers, the capabilities that we need to have in order for us to become resilient, the 25 ways that we could develop a certain level of grit within us. And lastly, we're now how to become mentally tough. Next slide, please. When you say mentally tough, it's a generic term actually. Okay, it has several behaviors below it. But the main point here is that you have a good use of your positive psychological resources. So kumbaga parang you have your weapons and you know when to use them. Parang ganito yan eh. If you're playing golf, okay, you're carrying a very heavy bag before when you play your golf. If you don't have a caddy, okay, you will carry the bag yourself. And it's quite a heavy bag because you have a lot of clubs. But you need to have all of those clubs because you never know when you would need them. Like a chef. A chef has an attaché case that is full of knives. But the chef has to bring them all the time because he doesn't know when he would use a paring knife from a fillet knife, from a chopping knife to a slicing knife, and things like that. So mental toughness is like that. You understand what you are, what you're capable of, what are your resources at your disposal, and you know when to use them. Next, please. Now, when you look at it, toughness and grit are things that you can develop. And in order for it to be mentally tough, you need both of them to combine to one another and produce consistency. Okay? Again, it's not about talent. It's about you being able to produce and exert an effort that continuously answers the challenge of everyday living. So the root word here for mental toughness is consistency. Okay? So how do we now try to become more consistent? Let's go to the next slide, please. So for athletes, for example, do workouts. They don't miss their assignments on the field. Okay? And they always support one another. For the leaders, they're focused on what they want to achieve in every single day. But they don't let the short-term profits, issues, or hectic schedules knock them off course. They put on like a horse's visor, a blinder, so to speak, that tells them there's only one direction and that stay on that direction, whatever may happen. Okay? And for artists, they stick to a schedule. Okay? They don't do things just because they feel like doing them. They do it. They act professionally. They respect the fact that they are professionals. They respect the profession that they belong to. And they understand that that profession has a use, a purpose that it has to fulfill. Okay? Next, please. So, how do you now apply this mental toughness in the real world? First, you need to take it personally. Meaning, what are the things that are really important for you? Or at least the important things that enable you to fulfill the goals, the dreams, the actions that you want for yourself. Okay? So, the question is, what's important for you? Sabi nga ng isang commercial sa kape, di ba? Anong nagpapabangon sa'yo? Ano ang rason para bumangon ka sa umaga? Okay? And then after you identify that, next please. Okay? This would mean whether it's just arriving for work properly, meeting your friends regularly, finishing your job ahead of the deadline, not after the deadline, okay? Not being absent from work, still taking the time to eat out and watch a movie, for example, or at least doing meditation. Being mentally tough is abstract and it's a personal thing for all of us. So to each of his own. Okay? The important thing is that you try to make it as specific and on the mark to what you really need as an individual. Next, please. Next. Mental toughness is built on little victories. What you need to understand is to make sub checkpoints or sub stages for a single task. Okay? Sometimes if the task is too big, you need to divide it into smaller chunks in order for them to be more realistically achievable. And for every checkpoint that you accomplish, attribute it to the fact that you are the one who enabled for it to happen. Don't look down on small victories. You need to understand that the mere fact that you did that small part, it contributes to the completion of the bigger task that you are in. Parang ganito lang yan eh. If you are a student, let's say, you wish to graduate, but you cannot graduate if you don't finish your courses. You can't finish your courses if you fail your quizzes, if you don't pass your assignments. So therefore, just the mere fact that you passed an assignment time, it contributes to you getting a better grade of the course, which then contributes subsequently to you finishing your degree. If you are an employee, your attendance is your smallest victory because the mere fact that you're there in the office that day, you were capable of letting yourself be present and be available to the task that needs to be given to you. That's a small victory. Okay? You need to learn on how to capitalize on the smaller things because they make up the big goals that you have. Lastly, habits count more than motivation. What you need to understand is that motivation is very subjective. It could fluctuate. There are some days that you are very much motivated. There are some days that you're not motivated at all. So therefore, learning to have a habit, a routine, okay, a sequence that you follow, okay, because having that sequence enables you to avoid being idle or being lost at what you need to do next. Having a good planning, a good organization of the things you want to do, and one sequence to the other, that will enable you to reach your goals at a better way. Okay, next please. Remember, learning a habit, maintaining it, enables you to get the building blocks of the success that you want to have for yourself. Okay? Being consistent enables you to be mentally tough because it then strengthens the idea that success is always there, even at a small scale. And then it enables you to feel that you have a certain level of dedication towards the thing that you're going through, and therefore eliminate the possible chances of you giving up on it. Next, please. So how do you apply this in the workplace? Number one, lighten mind's workload. Use a pen and a paper, write all of the things that you need to go through. It doesn't have to stick into your mind, okay? Minsan, if you keep your mind too cluttered, all the more that you miss things. Write everything down, okay? Actually, your mind is for processing, not for storing, okay? Your cell phone is for storing information. You put there your meetings, the people that you need to talk to, the people you need to call, the people that you need to submit things for. The mind is for processing, for being creative, for dealing, for resolving. Okay? Keep the storing out of the mind. Okay? Next, focus on things that you are in control of. Complaining is something that you're not in control of. Even though how hard you complain, if there's already a monumental problem that cannot be changed, you have to take a step back. So psychology, we have what we call problem focus and emotion focus coping. In problem focused coping, you get to the source of the problem and then you change it there. But the problem is that in reality, it's not always the case that you can change the source of the problem. So therefore, change the way that you look at the problem. That's what emotion focused coping is. Okay? Next, please. Remember, when somebody is becoming successful and is a part of your team, his success team's success as well. Don't be envious. In fact, use him as a model in order for you to maybe possibly open new doors for yourself. His actions may become an inspiration for you to experiment on other tactics that you have not been using, which may also enable you to feel better with yourself. Okay? Next, stay positive. Diba? Always ensure yourself that there is still something that you need to hold on to. Diba may purpose ka nga eh. May rason kung bakit ka nandyan. Okay? Do the best to continue your path on towards your target. Be consistent. To hell or high water, you need to do what you have to finish. Okay? You need to be dedicated with it. Because again, you value the profession and you respect the profession that you are in. Next, please. And with that, I thank you for your time and thank you for listening to me today.
Wow. Tofi, that was very rich and quite a lot of learnings from you this afternoon. Thank you so much for that discussion. We have questions here. First is a person with bipolar behavior considered mentally ill? Does he have to consult a psychiatrist or psychologist to address his behavior or disorder? Is this curable?
Okay, good. That's a good question. Thank you for that. Yes, bipolar mental health concern. You need to have both the services of a psychiatrist and a psychologist in order for you to deal with it. The psychiatrist needs to prescribe mood stabilizers to the patient so that there will be no quick or rapid cycling between the two opposing moods. Because bipolar, it means that you are juggling two significant opposite emotional states. One that is something too positive and one that's something too negative. You need to let yourself remain in the middle. So mood stabilizers will be helpful for that. Then the psychologist is also needed in order for you to learn how to deal with it when the stressors come so that you don't get too much effect. So yes, it is a legitimate concern. Contact a psychiatrist first so that you can be given a medication. And then once the medication kicks in, contact your psychologist so that you can go into psychotherapy so that you can uproot the root cause of your bipolar condition.
Thank you, Tofi. Another question here is who is responsible for bringing up the topic of a potential mental illness to a co-worker, especially if they may not even be diagnosed or not yet aware of it? How do we go about creating a safe space and ethical system for all?
Okay. The first person who's responsible for that is the immediate superior of the individual in question. Now, again, use the ORA system. Make an observation, reflect that observation back to the person, and then ask if there is something that needs to be talked about. You need to understand that you need to put the person in a safe environment where there is at least a physical isolation, so to speak, between the two of you. So you don't do it in the open floor of your office. You need to place safe that you can conversation, someplace private that could also protect the identity of the individual in question. Now, the main concern here is that the leak of information, and that's why we also need to safeguard it. So the right way is that the immediate superior will be the first one to call the attention of the individual, and if the individual agrees, you then help it into HR. Okay, so HR also has to have a say on this so that they can also properly monitor the progress of the case.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. And then we have here another question. Can you suggest a simple therapy which a person can do at home if he or she is bothered by what is happening now?
Yes. Actually, I could give a file to the PA to PMAP. It's called diaphragmatic breathing and progressive muscle tensioning. So exercises could be very helpful as a first aid. Person starts to become tense or become distressed by his or her immediate environment. So that's a good start in order for you to at least sustain a good level of functionality for a short time being.
Yes, we would appreciate that, Tofi. Last question. Does age or premenopausal stage be the reason of feeling depressed? The reason behind this question is that the person is approaching premenopausal stage and there are feelings of episodes of feeling depressed and the person is wondering bakit biglang sumasagi sa isip niya, memories of childhood, losing friends, etc.
It is a factor, but it doesn't necessarily follow that you are psychologically ill. Okay? Let's put it this way. When you're premenopausal, what happens here is that you are now starting to lose your estrogen hormone. And that hormone is also capable of altering your mood. So technically, this is physiologically based. So you just need to consult your gynecologist in order for you to be given a prescription of estrogen substitute. At the same time, you could go into expressive activities like drawing, crayon coloring, watercoloring, face painting, clay, anything that will enable your hands to learn and become more active. Because what it will do is that it will liberate the pent up emotion within you.
Okay, thank you so much, Tofi, for those responses. Okay, so it's 5 minutes to 5. We are actually over time now. All right, we'll have one more question here because the person sent this twice. So I think there's really a pressing need for this question. How can a department function at its best being manipulated by SVP to fail since she or he doesn't like the manager or employee, and this is very tormenting and traumatic. So I think my understanding is that there is a senior leader who does not like an employee or a manager, and this has become traumatic already for the employee. And the question is, how can the employee function at its best, and also how can the department, who I would presume is now being affected by the senior leader as well, how can they function at its best as well?
Okay. First and foremost, let's shy away from the use of the word traumatic. Because remember, it only becomes traumatic if you have a critical incident that you experience. And a critical incident is something unpredictable, uncontrollable, meaningless, and life-threatening. So unless that SVP is pushing you down a cliff, then it's not yet life-threatening. So you don't need to look at it as something traumatic. However, I would rather say that it is distressing. Now, what you need to first look at is this your personal view of the matter, or is it something that's collectively shared with the rest of the group? Maybe because it's only you who's trying to miss out on that particular perspective. So the best start would be to first ask your group mates whether they feel the same or whether what they feel, okay, about that SVP is something positive or negative. Now, if there is a sufficient number of people within the group that the person can collect to and connect with, and then the result is that most of them are agreeing with this person that the SVP is triggering them to fail, then they contact the SVP muna. That's the right way. You don't bark at the wrong tree. So you try to look at the person who's really concerned. Now, if that person doesn't make an action out of it, that's the time that you could go to somebody higher, maybe someone higher in your HR or the person who is higher, one level higher than that SVP. The important thing is that you call his or her attention first to the matter. Do not try to bypass him by going directly to somebody higher than him. Try to resolve it within your level. Okay? If it doesn't work, that's the time that you raise
Thank
it
you,
above.
Toffee. Thank
You're
you,
welcome po.
Carol. And thank you, everyone.
Okay, all right. So, thank you so much, Tolfi, for answering the question. It's now 3 minutes to 5, so we'll now close the session. And for those who still have questions, please don't worry because we will send all these questions to Tolfi, and we will include his responses in the presentation file that we will send to everyone. All right. So, again, I would just like to have a very short, a very quick summary. We have been presented with all the myths, and I really appreciated that, Tofi, to tell you. I mean, that was very educational because mental health is a topic that we all shy away from, or sometimes we handle it very wrongly. And I really appreciated this discussion, very rich with a lot of practical tips. And one thing that my key takeaway from here is that there are ways that we can manage it, both from a leader perspective and also from an individual perspective. We can develop resilience, and also we can develop the growth mindset, and we have control over what is happening around us. And I really like what you said about how can we bounce back, and how can we become better than what we were before. So again, thank you so much, Tofi. Thank you so much to our participants, and of course, PMAC would like to thank our sponsors, Makati Medical Center and Home Healthcare Incorporated. And again, a copy of the presentation will be sent to everyone. And thank you for your active participation, your involvement, your listening. We hope that this session was very helpful. For more webinars, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and other social media accounts. So thank you and good afternoon.